The National Desk, America's News Now.
Cocaine at the White House now under review from Congress as administration officials move away from speculation of whose it was.
You know, there has been some irresponsible reporting about the family, and so I got to call that out here.
Police have made an arrest in one of the many shootings that happened over the 4th of July holiday. And more Canadian wildfire smoke could hit the U.S. soon. The latest forecast and new steps Canada is taking to fight the flames. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Good Friday to you. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and 45 million people are in the path of severe weather tonight. Right now, severe storms are making their way across the Great Plains towards the East Coast. The panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma may experience strong winds and heavy rain. The National Weather Service has issued flash flood watches for southern Kansas, central Maryland, Washington, D.C., as well as the northern parts of New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. A heads up as you are making weekend plans. Tomorrow, more scattered storms are expected across central U.S., bringing severe weather alerts from Casper, Wyoming to Memphis, Tennessee. There is at least a 15% chance for heavy winds and hail over the plains. Now, by Sunday, these swath of storms, they will make their way to the southeast as more than 45 million people are in an early level 2 severe weather warning. This covers Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas, all the way up the coast of Baltimore. And still, more than 20 million Americans face heat alerts tonight, impacting Miami and northern Florida, parts of Texas, New Mexico, and Washington, and continued extreme heat warnings in Arizona as the Phoenix area has had 6 consecutive days of 110 degrees or more, and could threaten the record set in 1974 with 18 consecutive days of at least 110 degrees. If the 2-week forecast holds of more than 110 degrees until at least July 21st. Globally, the Earth has set its unofficial heat record for the 4th straight day. The average global temperature hit 63 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday, according to the University of Maine's Climate Reanalyzer. That surpassed the previous records for both Tuesday and Wednesday. The University of Maine uses satellites and computer simulations to collect this data. The United States is ramping up its support for Ukraine with a new military aid package that includes controversial weapons called cluster munitions. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar explains why the White House made this decision now after months of hesitation.
In the thick of their counteroffensive, Ukrainian troops will soon have the firepower of cluster munitions, courtesy of the United States. Also known as cluster bombs, they're dozens of small grenades packed into a 155-millimeter artillery shell.
When these bomblets are scattered across a wide area, and the ones that don't go off, those can be triggered at any time years later just by being kicked over.
Those are referred to as duds and can harm or kill civilians. More than 100 nations, including many NATO allies, signed a treaty prohibiting the use, production, stockpiling, and transfer of these weapons. The U.S., Ukraine, and Russia did not participate. And both Russia and Ukraine have used them in the war, and according to Human Rights Watch, Ukrainian cluster munition rocket attacks on Russian-controlled areas in and around the city of Izium in eastern Ukraine during 2022 caused many casualties among Ukrainian civilians. As for Russia,
their weapon systems have extremely high dud rates, and they know that. And they also employ those weapon systems across civilian areas, and they fire them indiscriminately.
We do believe it would be useful.
2 weeks ago, Pentagon officials told lawmakers their military analysts confirmed these weapons would be useful on the Ukrainian battlefield, especially against dug-in Russian positions. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says it was a difficult decision, acknowledging concerns from the beginning of the war when there were initial reports of Russia using them.
If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
They're using them on their territory to defend their territory. And when we look at what Ukraine would be doing with these weapons as opposed to what Russia is doing with these weapons, we see a substantial difference.
Now, Sullivan also points out that Russia's already used these cluster munitions in the same areas where Ukraine will now use those provided by the United States, meaning that same land would have to be demined whether the U.S. provided these weapon systems or not. Didi?
Good point. I mean, how long, though, will it take to train Ukrainians on these weapons, Atra, and how long will it take to actually deliver them?
It'll require minimal training, according to Matt Dimmick, that former NSC official you heard in the piece there. He says that Ukrainian troops are already experts in firing 155 millimeter shells, which are those used in these cluster munitions. So it's really just a matter of navigating the aim of these munitions. As for delivery, also should be fairly expedited, considering the fact that they don't need to be constructed. They're already assembled in U.S. weapons depots, in stockpiles. It's really just getting them on a plane and shipping them over to those Ukrainian soldiers.
All right, good breakdown. Audra El-Nashar reporting from Washington. Thank you.
Thanks.
The House Oversight Committee chairman is calling on the head of the Secret Service to update Congress by the end of next week on their investigation into cocaine found at the White House. Earlier this week, Senator Tom Cotton also demanded more information, asking if the White House complex is secure and how often agents find illegal drugs at the White House. While the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan refuted claims that the location of the drugs could have impacted anything in the White House Situation Room.
The Situation Room is not in use and has not been in use for months because it is currently under construction. We are using an alternate Situation Room in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. So the only people coming in and going out of the sit room in this period have been workers who are getting it ready to go.
A 17-year-old has been arrested in connection with the Baltimore block party shooting that killed 2 people and hurt 28 others. According to the Baltimore Police Department, authorities believe the teen was involved, but not clear how. His identity has not been released. He faces gun possession and reckless endangerment charges. 3 victims are still in the hospital. The man convicted of a mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, has received 90 consecutive life sentences. 24-year-old Patrick Cruces killed 23 Hispanic people at a Walmart in 2019. He pleaded guilty earlier this year to nearly 50 hate crime charges. Cruces did not visibly react when the verdict was read. He could still face more punishment, including the death penalty. The Biden administration has proposed a new regulation to crack down on short-term health insurance plans. The rule would curtail a Trump-era expansion of the availability of these plans, limiting their duration to 3 months with a 1-month extension option. It would also require more clear explanations of benefits. The administration says the plan can leave patients with costly medical bills. New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed President Joe Biden's re-election campaign. It's a change from 2020, when the self-described Democratic socialist endorsed Senator Bernie Sanders in the primary. Kansas's state attorney general is suing the state and rebuking the governor for continuing to allow transgender residents to modify the sex on their state-issued driver's license. Now, a new Kansas law went into effect this past Saturday that was supposed to end such changes. Now, Democratic Governor Laura Kelly issued a directive last week for state agencies to ignore the law, which was enacted despite her veto. Federal judges last month upheld similar policies in Oklahoma and Tennessee. New details now. The New Jersey cargo ship fire that killed 2 firefighters will likely burn for a few more days. Officials said today that it started Wednesday night on a ship carrying hundreds of vehicles. Now, a Coast Guard official said they won't know the cause until an investigation after it is out. A union official said the firefighters needed larger hoses. The firefighters who lost their lives, Augusto Akabu and Wayne Brooks Jr., were honored at a memorial today. Maine's governor is expected to sign a bill expanding access to abortions later in pregnancy. The state legislature approved the bill that would allow abortions at any time if medically necessary. Maine's current law restricts abortion after 24 weeks, and according to CDC data, only 1% of abortions happen after 21 weeks. Meantime, in Wisconsin, a federal judge declined to dismiss a legal challenge to the state's 174-year-old abortion ban. In 1849, Wisconsin lawmakers outlawed all abortions except in cases to save, they say, a mother's life. Roe v. Wade had nullified the law, but lawmakers never repealed it, so it went back into effect last year. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is criticizing how China is treating U.S. companies during her visit there. In a meeting today with American execs operating in China, Yellen says she brought up concerns about how China treats companies with foreign ties during meetings with her Chinese counterparts. She also denied that the U.S. wants economic separation from China.
We seek to diversify and not to decouple. A decoupling of the world's two largest economies would be destabilizing for the global economy.
Treasury officials say Yellen's trip is part of efforts to improve relations with China, and Yellen's trip won't be the last Biden official to visit China. White House climate envoy John Kerry will head there next week to restart talks on climate change. China had called off such talks last August when former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Coming up next here, a polarizing 4th of July tweet turning into a PR headache. Coming up next, the backlash against a popular American ice cream company, and air quality in the U.S. will continue to be impacted by our neighbors to the north, when we could finally see some relief. And then later on, a TikTok challenge is taking over in one state with deadly results. We'll explain. We're back in 90 seconds. More smoke from Canadian wildfires could hit the U.S. next week. The states most at risk for air quality impacts are those closest to the border from Montana to the northern Great Lakes. Canada's fires could keep burning for the next 2 months. That's the latest assessment from the country's wildland fire forecast. Canada's Minister of Emergency Preparedness says 684 wildfires are burning there, 339 considered out of control.
Drought conditions, when coupled with above normal temperatures across most of the country, means that the risk of fire activity is going to remain very high throughout the majority of the summer.
Canada plans to train 1,000 new firefighters to fight these wildfires. Turning to your money, U.S. hiring slowed a bit last month. The Labor Department reporting that U.S. employers added about 209,000 jobs in June. That's down from May and lower than what economists expected. The unemployment rate fell to 3.6% in June, and wages increased from a year ago. The report suggests the economy is still resilient, and the Fed will very likely resume interest rate hikes. Meantime, according to Bank of America, there's about a 90% chance of a labor strike at one of the three big car makers in Detroit, and possibly a second strike at another. This as United Auto Workers Union negotiates with EV maker Ultium Cells, owned jointly by GM and a Korean company, to hammer out a 4-year deal. Bloomberg reports workers worry about the safety of the batteries they work with, citing fires at some plants. DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats, they are suing New York City over a new law that would increase pay for food delivery workers on apps. A city official says it supports delivery workers. The companies have several issues with the law, including that they say it doesn't apply to grocery delivery, and they say it would force them to pay employees for being available even if they're not making deliveries. A polarizing 4th of July tweet freezing out a lot of fans of a popular American ice cream company. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us from Washington.
Ben & Jerry's challenged to put their money where their tweet is.
I think their compassion is a little bit as frozen as their ice cream.
To commemorate the 4th of July, the American ice cream company tweeting, "It's high time we recognize the U.S. exists on stolen indigenous land and commit to returning it." Critics quick to point out they built their headquarters on stolen indigenous land. We spoke with Chief Don Stevens, leader of the tribe with a historic claim to that land.
Anytime that you were the original stewards of a place or your homeland, you would always want to steward that place if it's possible.
Stevens has yet to talk to Ben & Jerry's about the land question, but says he'd like to. Ben & Jerry's not responding to our request for a comment. Calls for boycotts growing, reminiscent of Bud Light and Target. Both of those companies still struggling to recapture lost revenue following backlash from weighing in on the culture wars.
Every time you join forces with one side, you alienate a lot of other people, and that could have a detrimental impact on your client base.
Target's battles mounting. 7 Republican states' attorneys sending a letter to the CEO warning the company's Pride collection could violate child protection and parental rights laws. On Capitol Hill, House Republicans launching investigations into the environmental and social policies of corporations, including BlackRock and Vanguard. The lawmakers warn these ESG policies could violate antitrust laws. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink distancing himself from the term ESG.
I don't use the word ESG anymore. In my last CEO letter, the phrase ESG was not uttered once because it's been unfortunately politicized.
Fink clarifying, while he won't use the term, he's still committed to the ideas behind it, ideas that will be debated for the foreseeable future. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Kayla, thank you. An attorney disciplinary committee has recommended that Rudy Giuliani be disbarred in the District of Columbia for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election on Donald Trump's behalf, they say. The decision is not final and needs to go before the D.C.'s Board on Professional Responsibility and then the D.C. Court of Appeals. An over-the-counter weight loss supplement that's trending on social media may be more hype than help. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains why.
Hey there, everybody. This supplement comes from a bitter-tasting, yellow-colored plant compound known as berberine. It is found in certain plants, barberry, golden seal, and even tree turmeric. Those supporting it for weight loss claim it's something natural that works as nature's Ozempic. Ozempic is the injectable medication which works to fight hunger. But Dr. Justin Cole, chair of pharmacy practice and associate professor at Cedarville University, told me when it comes to this supplement and many others you get over the counter, buyer beware.
When you look at supplements across the board, 30 to 50% of the supplements for anything, whether it's melatonin, CBD, berberine in this case, don't contain what's actually on the label. And in many cases, they contain other compounds that can be particularly harmful.
In his 2014 review, researchers found berberine may help fight certain conditions with minimal side effects. But as for its ability to help you drop pounds,
we simply don't have a lot of data to know what the health effects are and potentially the side effects.
The data we do have from a National Library of Medicine pooled analysis shows the weight loss effect is minimal. On average, those who took berberine in this analysis had a 0.25 reduction in body mass index compared to a placebo. Body mass index is a body fat measurement based on weight and height. For medications such as Ozempic, the decrease in BMI compared to a placebo was 4.61 BMI units, or 18 times more effective than berberine. So before you think that any pill will be a substitute for eating and exercise,
it may have an impact on how our bodies use glucose, particularly muscles, and can increase how efficient some of your tissues are at using glucose. However, if this has an effect, it's likely very, very small, especially related to weight loss.
Now, one other note, these supplements are not cheap. Some are as much as $40 a bottle for a 1-month supply. A medical reporter, Liz Bonus. Now back to you.
Liz, thank you. New York State's shark drones will continue to be used. It's happening off the coast of Long Island's beaches, and they're searching for sharks that could pose a danger to beachgoers. This week, at least 5 people have been bitten in the shallow waters of New York beaches. Just yesterday, a 10-foot thresher shark was spotted in the water at Robert Moses State Park, which was closed on Wednesday due to reports of sharks off of the coast. And although marine experts now believe they were likely black drumfish, in all of 2022, New York only reported 8 shark bites off Long Island's beaches. Las Vegas police have declined to press charges following an incident involving Britney Spears and San Antonio Spurs rookie Victor Wembanyama. Spears told police she was hit by Wembanyama's security guard while walking towards him, but security camera footage, apparently it shows Spears accidentally hit herself in the face when her hand was pushed off Wembanyama's shoulder. A woman was arrested outside Taylor Swift's Rhode Island home this week after being warned to stay away. It's not clear if Swift was there at the time. Several other people have been arrested at her homes in the past. Swift is in the middle of her Eras tour and just released the recorded version of her Speak Now album today. Coming up next here on the National Desk, Major League Baseball's All-Star Weekend starts tonight in Seattle. But the city's effort to look good for the crowds could have an unwanted impact on the actual game on Tuesday. We'll explain next. The National Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, starting in Alabama, where officials say a TikTok challenge is endangering boaters.
The trend is surfacing on Alabama's lakes and rivers, killing people of all ages.
Last 6 months, we have had 4 drownings that were easily avoidable. They were doing a TikTok challenge. It's where you get a boat going at a high rate of speed. You jump off the side of the boat. You don't dive. You're jumping off feet first, and you just kind of lean into the water.
Captain Jim Dennis is with the Childersburg Rescue Squad.
It is a very big concern because we have seen this pattern emerge over the last 2 years. And it's sporadic, but it's something that needs to go away and stay away.
When you hit the water, it's almost like hitting concrete at that speed. So nothing good is going to come from hitting water at that speed.
Seattle has been preparing for Major League Baseball's All-Star Week festivities, which begin tonight. Part of the process has been cleaning the streets of homeless encampments by the stadium.
Is this just for show? When the national crowds go home and the national TV cameras are turned off?
I don't think so. Like I said, this encampment wasn't there 2.5 weeks ago, and it was there 3 weeks before that. So what I see is a cleanup in the regular cycle of doing cleanups.
Although there is a planned protest by those against the cleanups on Tuesday, hoping to disrupt the All-Star game. Every species of sea turtles have been in danger since at least the 90s, experts say. In North Carolina, they say some turtles have been having trouble nesting due to how families are leaving the sand, which is different than how they found it.
We've had a problem with sand castles. So we do want people to come to the beach, have fun, dig holes, make your sand castle. We just ask that you take your pictures and knock it down before you leave and fill in the holes.
Officials want to remind beachgoers that preventing a protected species from nesting is a federal crime, even if accidental, and could result in fines up to $50,000 and a year in prison. Coming up next here, the oldest living former president breaking a new record with his wife today. The celebration coming up next in 90 seconds. Former President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalynn are celebrating their 77th wedding anniversary today at their home in Georgia. Jimmy Carter is 98 and he has been in home hospice care since February. Rosalynn Carter is 95 and suffers from dementia. Today they extend their record as the longest married first couple in our history. A Maryland man just caught a, look at this, record-breaking invasive fish. He was in a kayak when he reeled in a 21-pound, 36-inch snakehead fish. It was a pound heavier than the previous record. Anglers, by the way, are advised to kill any snakehead fish that they catch. And that's going to do it for us for now. Join us again tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. Just check your local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.